Hey guys, this is Carlos. My page is called Scarlet and Sable on Facebook, and I like to paint miniatures, and I've been putting some of my stuff on pages like Heavier Metal and Reddit and the Alaska Wargamers group. And a question that occurs a lot is, hey, what's that rust you're using? What's that rust color? How do you do that rust effect? So I was going to show a couple of the colors that I use. I can say for certain that I definitely use these two. Rust Light Shadow and Rust Base Color. But that's not necessarily the only colors that you can use for rust. Here's AK Rust Streaks. But this is kind of, I'm going to try to make a point here. This is called Burnt Sienna. You can see very rust looking, but not called rust. This is the unfortunately named Chink Orange by Scale 75 Games, or Scale 75 Fantasy and Games. That's from the Steampunk set. This is the Ben Comet's Secret Sauce, aka Scrag Brown. Great rust color. I found this guy, and I haven't really looked at him in quite a while, but this is an amazing kind of burnt sienna color called Bloodstone. This is a P3 color, not called rust. And then there's just the golden acrylics. This is a golden fluid acrylic, and this is burnt sienna. Real nice rust color. If you're into oils, and I may go into a little bit of a demo on how to do oils at some point, but I've had this forever. I've never used it, but Venetian Red, this is like a really rich, that's one of the things, well, let me finish. The Venetian Red is a really great reddish rust tone. Not called rust, just called Venetian Red. Burnt Sienna, another, we've talked about rust color. This actually is probably one of the best rust for transparent rust effects, streaking, etc. And Michael Rinaldi, who is a luminary of the scale modeling community, also highly recommends that color. This is Winton. This is the kind of step down from the artist quality line in the Winsor & Newton series, and it's Burnt Umber, which is a darker tone. But this is a more of a reddish burnt umber. Most burnt umbers are kind of reddish, but this Winsor & Newton is particularly so. So I guess one of the things that I've been trying to come to grips with, and I don't necessarily have to respond to it, but there isn't just one color that's going to give you that perfect rust tone. Rust is an effect that you could probably walk outside with your camera and take a picture of, and you'll see it almost anywhere unless you, I don't know, live in a jungle or maybe a snow-covered area where there's not a lot of metal. But the point is that you can find examples of rust anywhere you look, and the tones vary from almost yellow to almost black, and everywhere in between. So it's really, you know, as the person who is doing the painting, you should look at the colors that you have and say, hey, is this a rust tone that I could use? You know, and then guess what? You could even try it, and you can see if it works and how it looks with the particular color scheme that you want to use. And I'm holding this up, and this is an idea that I stole from Michael Rinaldi. I wrote to him and I said, hey man, what are those fancy little panels that you use in the beginning of your books to kind of demonstrate some of the techniques that you talk about? He's like, oh, yeah, that's just a white card that I cut up into sections, and then I glued it to a piece of foam core, and that's what I do. And I said, oh wow, that's kind of like ingenious and really easy and obvious. I don't know why I didn't think of that. And that's really getting back to my original point, which is like a lot of this stuff just takes a little bit of ingenuity, and we can we can find some pretty satisfactory solutions for a lot of these things that we're wondering about. So anyways, this panel is just something that I made, and I scribed these lines using an X-Acto blade in right here and right here. I used the I used a drill bit to drill out these little holes, kind of pretend it was a grate, and then I cut a thin a thin plastic card tube to make the rivets. Just tiny little slices, like you're cutting like a miniature piece of salami or something. And each one of these is one of those pieces. And then I glued them on with Tamiya extra thin cement to this piece, and voila, you have a panel that's ready for some weathering effects or whatever technique you want to practice. And then you prime it, and then you go to town. So you get your rust color or your streaking color or your other color that you want to practice an effect with, and you start to, develop these skills. You develop the techniques. So people can tell you, this is how it's done, but really until you do it, you won't really ever be able to translate what's on a Facebook page or on a Reddit page into real life until you actually start doing it. And it's actually, this is the fun part. This is the fun part of modeling. It is nice to get validation when you are finished and you go to Reddit and you get 500 people that you don't know telling you how awesome you are. That's always great, but this is actually the fun part. And once you're done with this, you can sort of cover this up and you can do it again, or you can just, be satisfied with it and then look back at it at times and say, yes, that's something that I did. I'll take the lock off, and you can see up closer, I've done quite a bit to this, a lot of techniques that I don't necessarily use, but I wanted to try out. Like this is sponge chipping. It's not a technique I employ usually, but I was trying to kind of spread my wings, so to speak. I have another panel that I also did. I was practicing an airbrushing technique that is popular on such groups as the Scale Modelers Critique group, and it's called black basing, so I thought I would try it out, and it's actually pretty easy. It's one of the easier airbrush techniques that I've seen, and it gives a very convincing result, but this is not a black basing video. There are black basing videos if you're interested, and if you type in black basing in YouTube, you'll find it. Anyways, this particular panel, you can see up close, it's covered in hair and grit and garbage and whatever, and water spots, but those aren't part of the weathering. Those are just because it was in the garage forever. But you can see I've tried like mud, I've tried chipping, I've done streaking, I've tried to use the airbrush to apply a, kind of a lighter streak and then gone back over it with an oil paint or an acrylic paint. So, I guess all I'm trying to show is that the way that you can get better at this stuff is by actually doing it. There are very easy ways, very practical ways to practice. I could take a piece like this, I could do 50, 100 streaks on it, and pretty soon, by the time you get to your 20th streak, or maybe even less, you will probably understand the fundamentals of how to do streaking with acrylics or with oils or enamels. I shouldn't oversimplify. Acrylic streaking is a little different than doing it with oils, but both of them have a technique to them, and once you do it 200 times, I promise you, you will be pretty good at it. So, I don't know, take a chance, paint, some plastic, put some streaks on it, put some oil on it, and then, rust it. Thanks for watching.